We got to carve out a spot for Nathan Vickers. Make sure he gets his credentials. I'll advocate on your behalf, Nathan.
All right. Yeah. Any help would be appreciated. Last year in Miami, I got to watch from the stadium, and that was amazing. My story about it is that I was sitting next to Danan Hughes, who's a former Chiefs player, and we had employed him to do some kind of color commentary for us. And he got to come up later in the game and sit with me in the same section of the press box we were in. And early in the game, I had kind of made some. It's the kind of thing you could get away with when you're at Arrowhead Stadium, where something cool happens. You're like, oh, all right. And I wasn't like cheering like crazy or anything like that, but it was kind of subtle comments like that. And there was some old crusty guy from San Francisco sitting next to me and says, "You can't cheer up here in the press box." So Danan Hughes gets up in the press box and he sits down next to me, and Danan's getting into it, and he's like, yeah. And the old San Francisco guy, I'm cheering the press conference. And of course, Danan is a former player.
Yeah.
And just like, look at the guy. And I just laughed. It was a great, but the funniest part in terms of coverage last year at the game was that I had to leave my seat early in the fourth quarter when the Chiefs were down by 20 points or however much that was. And so I missed the entire comeback. I was like outside getting ready for post game, thinking we were going to lose. And then I just hear these eruptions from inside the stadium. And I'm like checking my phone going like, oh. And so I had to watch like the Wasps play after the game, but it was still an awesome experience. This year we're just going to be outside.
I'm happy you at least had cell phone signal, because I've heard of similar situations for other big games, college games, where you think the outcome and the result, and then it's the exact opposite. You're going live on TV and you're supposed to know. And so I'm happy you at least had cell signal to be able to check to see what the score was, because I've heard horror stories where that's happened otherwise.
One perk of being in TV broadcast news is that they give you the Wi-Fi password, and it's like the best Wi-Fi in the country. They must have a server the size of a semi truck or something like that, because it always works great throughout the game.